episode number 17 of season 2 of Bodies, Barbells and Bagels. On today's episode, we have entrepreneur and CEO Joe Mencel from Massive Joe's, also IFBB Mens Physique Pro. This is going to be an awesome episode. It's a big one, so stay tuned and we hope you enjoy it.
So, welcome Joe, Massive Joe, as we can call you, from Massive Joe. So, CEO, the boss, entrepreneur, all of those things, as well as IFBB Mens Physique Pro, we have on the podcast with us today. So welcome, Joe. So nice to chat with you.
Thank you, guys. What an introduction.
We'll do a little special intro off there, which will make you sound even more fancy. But we didn't want to blow the ego up too much with the intro, so we thought we'll just keep it at that.
Did we miss anything?
No, no. I think you did a pretty good job.
Well,
you put a bunch of pressure on at the start of the podcast. The goods on this one.
Do you prefer Joseph or going by Joe?
I don't mind either or. If you ask my parents, they prefer Joseph.
Yes.
My mum in particular is she much prefers, she hates when people call me Joe, which is kind of awkward because the business is called Massive Joe's. But either or. I'm not fussed.
Awesome. All right, it'll be Joseph from here.
Joseph.
And Joseph.
Done. Let's roll with it.
Your mum happy, which is actually one of our opening icebreakers. So generally at the start of the podcast, we like to do a little bit of an icebreaker, get to know our guests, because obviously, like, I've met you briefly before. Sean's trained with you when you were over here on the Doug Miller tour, I think it was, which is awesome.
Yep.
And a little bit of an icebreaker. So the first one for you is, if your mum was to describe you in 3 simple words, what would they be?
Not you, your mum.
Your mum.
Oh, I like that one. She'd probably describe me as hardworking. She would describe me as, this is a hard question. I'm straight out the block with this one. This wasn't in my brief. She'd probably describe me as hardworking. She'd describe me as loving. And I imagine she would describe me as, she'd probably say she's very proud of me, I'd say. I don't really know what the word is to I guess, get that message across, but however
I
think that's a big
one.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we like the mum one, because if I said you describe yourself, it's very different. It doesn't really get to know you, but your mum knows you better. So that's
what would your mum say about you?
I don't know. Probably the same ones as you, actually. Probably hardworking, proud, and that I'm a brat and stubborn, I would say. So very similar, which is, I think, why I probably resonate with your story. I love watching your stories. I just feel like I connect with your message and everything about you. And I think also then from Sean's standpoint, you probably more connect with like more the bodybuilding side of things. And then combining the two, we find really, really inspiring, which is why we wanted you on the podcast. The fact that you managed to do both, to be not only a competitor, but a successful competitor, I think is very different to just competing. To get a pro card is a very hard thing to do in the IFBB in particular. And to go through and then obviously do that whilst running a massive, I'm going to call it an empire now, because it's not just a business, So second icebreaker question before we get into it. If you were to have a superpower, what would it be? As we've got our Avengers kick in the background.
No, this one's easy for me because I think about this a lot. It would be one of 2 things. It would either be the ability to not sleep. So like just not have to sleep at all would be an amazing superpower, I think, because you'd have immediately 30% more time, right?
Yeah.
Or if that wasn't an option, it would be the ability to have, let's say, 8 more hours in a day. more time in a day, or the superpower of not having to sleep.
Awesome. Yeah, that's yours. Sean hates sleep. So he's like, I've got to go to bed.
So, do you find that you get to the end of the day and you're really still quite productive? And it's like, I should go to sleep, but I want to get shit done.
Yeah. It's, the thing is, it's one of those weird things, right? And I guess this is a little bit of a contrast between the businessman in me and the athlete in me. Is from an athletic perspective, I understand how important it is, right? And you guys know, like when you're training in the gym and you're pushing your body, the rest and recovery period is almost as important, if not more important, than the actual training side of things. So from that perspective, sleep is like you know, the golden ticket for me as an athlete to becoming a better athlete. But then from the business perspective, I hate sleeping because I'm like, shit, I've got like so much. I'm the sort of person as well that I always put more on my plate than I know I can fit. So I get to the end of the day, there you go, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I get to the end of the day and I'm like, man, I've got so much more I could be doing. You know, why don't I just push it to like midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. But then, you know, it's like this wrestling match that I have in my own mind about, you know, how much should I sleep? When should I go to sleep? Trying to, I guess, balance, for lack of a better term, the rest and recovery benefits and then the benefits of being able to use time more effectively.
Absolutely.
How much sleep do you reckon you run off of?
Or what do you aim for? Yeah, what's good for you?
If I get less than 6, I'm in trouble. Like that really starts to affect me, not just physically, but psychologically as well at work. So I try and aim for, usually it's between 6 and 7. You know, that's kind of where I settle down to. But, you know, sometimes, you know, on the weekend or whatever, I might sleep 8 hours, but usually 7.
Yeah, awesome. And then when you're in a contest prep phase, would you try to push that a little bit more and shift your balance, so to speak, more towards that?
You know, Ali, I would love to, but I find when I'm in contest prep, especially the closer I get to the show and the leaner I get, the harder it is for me to sleep. So, you know, contest prep is when I'll start going to sub 6 hours sleep just because I can't. Like,
we've never experienced that.
Really?
Yeah, which is strange because I have clients who just say the same and some who are the opposite and they sleep like babies. So I'd be really interested to actually know why, and maybe we'll have to get one of our nerdy mates doing his PhD to have a look into it. Yeah, we're getting a sleep specialist on the podcast, so that'll be cool.
There you go. You could ask him. It would definitely be something to do with, you know, irregular hormone secretions and whatnot, but I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And the fluctuations there and adrenaline and everything going on. And, you know, for you as well, I guess it would be a case of just fitting things into your day too. If you've got to fit in cardio as well as training and other things during a contest.
That's the other thing.
Things and meal prep's priority. So I guess all of those variations in there. So I guess the biggest stuff we're going to start off with is more so work into the business background and your business and everything there, and kind of finish off on being an athlete and that kind of focus. So Shawnee's done a little bit of research on the background of Massive Joe, so you're going to get stuck in.
A little bit, but we'll kind of tease it out of you more than anything, instead of me regurgitating stuff. So basically we just want to hear how you started Massive Joe's. Like, literally, where was day one? And what, you're up to almost year 15 now, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, it's getting pretty close. So I guess the business, it's quite a long story, as you could imagine. You know, it goes back to the early 2000s. But the best way that I can kind of distill it out or kind of Kentucky tour my business journey so far was I used to, when I was younger, in my teenage years, I used to play a lot of basketball. So I came from a performance-based background. And that, I guess, was my first exposure to what we now know as health and fitness. Back then, we knew it as resistance-based training to perform better as an athlete. But that was when I was first introduced to the weights room and lifting weights to get stronger and more powerful to improve my performance as a basketballer. Long story short, I developed a few injuries. I played basketball at quite a high level, especially from an Australian perspective. State teams, national teams, toured the US, looked at different colleges over there and whatnot. But I developed a couple of injuries in my back, stress fractures in my back that were very rare and ended anything I could do with basketball by the time I was 18. So at that point, I really, because of the severity of the injuries in my back, I really couldn't do anything that was performance sports based. Anything that was running or jumping was kind of out of the question, which means obviously basketball was out of the question. Devastating for me at the time. Like, I remember, especially at that age, and like that's what I was going to do, and it was kind of ripped away from me within seconds of that injury happening. But it opened up the opportunity for me to spend more time in the weights room and, explore weight training competitively, not just as a kind of side project to get better as a basketballer. So I spent more and more time in the weights room, and then I guess my competitive athletic streak kind of came out, and I was like, I could do like powerlifting or strongman type stuff, or I could do the aesthetic side of health and fitness, which was bodybuilding. And I'd always kind of been interested in aesthetic-based physiques, you know, looking up to like Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, those kind of classic physiques of those guys. And I was like, I reckon I can do that. I'm kind of tall like Arnold was. I got big shoulders like Arnold through playing basketball. So I'm going to try bodybuilding. So I did my first comp in 2004 when I was 18 years old in the teenage division here in Adelaide, and I did quite well. And at the time, I was exploring with supplementation to give me a competitive edge as a natural bodybuilder. So back then, this is the early 2000s, in Australia in particular, we had like no supplements. Like I remember, you know, the protein powder. Yeah, absolutely. It was like, it tasted like literally like if you had got cardboard and put it in a shaker, and we didn't have shakers back then, put it in a blender and like added water and blended the cardboard with water and drank it. Like that's what it was like. I remember creatine used to cost like $1 a gram. We just like, we had nothing. So I started looking at supplementation in the US, because in the US, they had a change of laws with the way that supplements were regulated through the FDA in the early 2000s. And so the supplement industry in the US really started to blow up. And you had companies back then, Optimum Nutrition, BSN was like the first company that really did a proper pre-workout, a proper amino acid, a proper protein powder that didn't taste horrible. That actually tasted like a milkshake. Creatines and so on and so forth. And so I took a real interest in that and started importing supplements from the US for my personal use to get better as a competitive natural bodybuilder. And at the time, so I'm 18 years old, I finished high school, I've started university, so I'm primarily training at the Adelaide University gym at the time. And back then, once again, this is for the listeners, probably going to seem a little strange, but back then in the early 2000s, like if you did it, like competed in bodybuilding, it was like a big deal, you know, like people didn't do it. It's not like it is now. Like, you know, you go to the gym for 6 months and then you set the goal of getting on stage and you do a competition. Like back then it was like, man, it was weird. It was strange to do a bodybuilding competition. So you kind of put these things all together. So I'm 18 years old, first year university, training at the uni gym, competing in bodybuilding, doing quite well. Everyone at the gym kind of knew that I was doing quite well because it was so strange. Then they'd see me come to the gym. I'd have my pre-workout supplement. Other guys were kind of drinking coffee to give them a little bit of a buzz. Everyone would be drinking water, you know, in drink bottles, intra-workout. I'd have like colored stuff in my drink bottle. Post-workout, I'd have a shake. The other guys would go upstairs to the uni bar and have a schnitty and a beer. And so these guys naturally started taking an interest in what I was doing because I was doing quite well competitively. And so the questions start coming, look, man, next time you import, you know, those supplements you're taking, do you mind getting me some? Like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Next thing you know, I'm like supplying the whole of Adelaide University gym.
Sound like a drug dealer.
With pre-workouts, intra-workouts, and protein powders, like literally selling out of the boot of my car to guys. It was like, you know, some shady shit going down outside the uni gym, but selling supplements. And then, you know, that kind of spreads to the other universities in South Australia, UniSA, Flinders University. Before I know it, I'm like the sup guy in Adelaide by default, just because it was, I guess, the right timing, pretty much. And then I guess the next step in terms of the business progression was I was always interested through my teenage years in business. I you know, if you speak to my parents, I'll probably tell you that I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial streak, and it kind of runs in my family if you go back generations. But I always had an entrepreneurial streak. So I'd be, you know, back in high school, I used to buy like a 24 can of Coca-Cola cans and, you know, sneak them into my locker and then undercut the tuck shop and sell them for 50 cents, you know, and make like $10 a day just from, you know, just like little entrepreneurial things like that.
You do some of that?
Yeah, I used to make my
paper
and sell it.
yeah. Just little businessy things like that. And then when e-commerce came around, I took a particular interest in e-commerce. So I used to sell stuff on eBay You know, when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, I used to sell like little bracelets. I used to sell iPods when they first came out. I always kind of had my fingers in e-commerce pies. And so when this opportunity came with supplements, I immediately thought, well, why don't I take what I'm doing here, you know, person to person at the university gyms in South Australia and see if I can sell these supplements online. So I had an eBay store at the time selling all other bits and pieces. I set up another one to sell supplements. And just like that, I was the first person ever to sell supplements on eBay in an e-commerce perspective in Australia. And this is back when eBay is auction only. So there's no buy it now. It's not like it was today. It was literally an auction site. So I'd, you know, import a pre-workout, say BSN Nano Explode was like one of the first ones that I did. And I'd land it, you know, in Australia after shipping and duties and taxes and stuff, like $30, put it on eBay and let people bid it up, right? And people bidding it up to like $150. It was ridiculous. And I'm like 18 years old, and I'm like, you know, for work at the time, you know, I was doing a little bit of tutoring for, you know, $20 an hour. I was coaching some basketball, same thing, kind of, you know, $15, $20 an hour. And I'm selling a type of pre-workout and making $100 plus. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I, you know, kind of put everything I could into that, and I'm importing pallets of stuff now and selling them online. And, you know, as happens with most businesses that are that lucrative, they kind of, competition comes in very quickly. And so that whole eBay side of things got eroded within, you know, probably a matter of 3 to 6 months. I'd say I went from making, you know, $100 a tub on supplements to maybe 5 or 10, because all this competition came in very quickly. So the nature of auction sites, supply and demand, right? So the more supply comes in, the price effectively comes down, which is what I found. Fortunately, I guess at that point I noticed it became quite clear to me that I needed to get off that auction site because there was too much competition. The barriers to entry were very low. I had no control over my customer base. I wasn't building a customer database, just the basic business stuff you weren't able to do using a third-party site. So I got with a friend of mine who was at university studying web design and IT systems and built the very first version of MassiveJoes.com, and then started running the business through there. So I was doing, you know, still the driving around to the uni gyms, selling sups out the back of the car to anyone that was interested in buying them locally, and then running the eBay store. I still kept that running, and then running the very first version of MassiveJoes.com. And this is November 2005, so the end of 2005. So going back 13-ish years ago now. And that's where it started. That's kind of the, you know, the initial planting of the seed, the real grassroots side of the business.
That's so interesting.
When did you get your first store?
So the first retail store, and I guess this is kind of, I guess, where the timeline comes in. So at university, I studied 2 difficult degrees. So I studied mechanical engineering and law, which kept me at university from 2005 until the end of 2011. So I spent 8 years I spent more time at university than I did at high school. To put it in perspective, it was a long time. So the first retail store actually didn't come about until 2013. So, you know, while I was studying at university, competing in bodybuilding, running the Massive Joe's business. I was working professionally as well because I finished engineering first and then did law second. So I finished engineering. I was working full-time in engineering as well. I had a lot of different things going on. So the opportunity, I guess, for me to really commit to the business full-time didn't come about until the start of 2012, because that's when I'd finished all of my studies. So at that point, it was kind of like, okay, your studies are done. You've got these 2 professional degrees. You've had 3 years experience now working as an engineer. I did 6 months working in corporate law as well. And it was like, okay, now it's time to kind of make a decision, burn your boats, so to speak, and really commit and just go all in on something. And I chose at that point to go all in on the business. And that's kind of when the retail stores came, you know, and a whole bunch of other different bits and pieces of the business.
I guess just stopping you there, because this is probably something that I think a lot of people get to this point in their career where they kind of go, I'm really passionate about this, but I'm really fucking scared. Or I'm super, you know, this is my degree, because I kind of did the same as you, 7 years at uni, same sort of thing. and then could have gone down clinical route, went, did crack, hated it, went, fuck this, I want to work for myself. So for you, what helped you make that decision? Because I'm sure you had like your family being like, Joseph, you must, lawyer, engineer, career. And then you've got like, your mates going, no, you're Massive Joe, like this is awesome. So what kind of helps you in that decision process of taking that leap of faith?
Yeah. So I think the thing, and I actually remember this quite vividly because I have recurring dreams about it quite often. I have a few recurring dreams. One of them is about my last ever exam at university, and one of them was about the time I made the decision. Because I remember I was sitting at my parents' house in the kitchen, and I was talking to my father about it, and I was like, Dad, like, I really I don't know which path is the right path, because fortunately I had a lot of options on the table. It was, go and continue to work as an engineer that I was being paid. I was working in oil and gas. So the salary was phenomenal, especially then. I'm in like my mid-20s and I was making really good money. Do I continue doing that? Do I go and pursue the law career that I wanted to pursue, or this business that kind of, popped out, wasn't planned, it kind of popped out and the opportunity was there? Do I go and do that? And I remember what really, I guess, solidified the decision in my mind was ultimately what is going to bring me the most happiness, what is going to bring me the most fulfillment in what I'm doing as a career, keeping in mind that I'm going to spend a big chunk of my time in the adult period of my life working. So does that look like working as an oil and gas engineer, spending time in the field, working for an ASX 200 company, so on and so forth? Does it look like working in a private law firm, doing 12-hour days, working my way up to partner and going down that particular path? Or does it look like pursuing something that I'm crazy passionate about, the sort of shit that, is the last thing I think about when I go to sleep at night, the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, being able to build something from literally nothing that can outlive me, hugely outlive me. Like what is going to bring me the most happiness? What is going to bring me the most fulfillment? Keeping in mind, I'm going to spend a big chunk of my life invested in this. And once I kind of had clarity around that, it became super, super obvious about what it is that the decision I was going to make. And at that point, there was no doubt from my perspective. So, and it's funny as well, because, even with my parents, I guess their kind of background is my mum is Italian and kind of came from war-torn Italy. My dad's Polish, came from war invaded Poland when the Germans invaded Poland. And so, I guess their kind of mentality has always been security, right? Because of the uncertainty of war, and coming from, my mum's family was very, very poor back in Italy. My dad's family was very, very well off, but lost everything in the war. So they're always about security. So I guess, they're in the back of their minds, they're thinking, just take the safe route. You spent all this time and you've invested all this effort and energy in these professional careers. But once I had that clarity and I could explain that clarity to them, they were on board 100% as well, which, gave me huge confidence in the fact that I've made the right decision.
Yeah. And I think also like the fact that you had something to potentially fall back on is kind of a little bit of a safety net, because it's like, well, even if that failed, even if, you did it for a year and you lost a bit of coin, you learn a lesson, whatever, you're a lawyer or an engineer, you know what I mean? Whereas obviously and I always say that to young people if they ask, I'm like, well, you're young, what risks have you got? Do a risk assessment, what's the pros and cons here? So when you are making like bigger decisions now, let's say big business decisions, big investments, do you have a kind of process where you run through a bit of a risk analysis of big investment or decision making? What's your kind of process nowadays?
Yeah, well, 100%. And it obviously depends on the context and what the decision is about. But I mean, cost benefit analysis or risk benefit analysis, whatever you want to call it, is a big part of business decision making. 100%. I do it pretty much every day. I'm making decisions in one form or another. And that always comes in, you know, what do we have to gain? What do we have to lose? What are the risks? What are the rewards? Which side of the scale do we fall on? And therefore, is it a good decision to make? Yes or no?
Yeah, awesome. So it's just evolved, like, from being a decision about what you're going to do from a career to now every single day as a business owner, you are making those big decisions, you know? Yeah. So I guess in a big part of that is sometimes your decisions are not going to go the way that you thought they may have gone. And, you know, there's going to be failures along the way, whether you see them as, you know, I'm sure you see them as a lesson rather than a failure. Yeah. So I guess one of the big questions is, you know, we've talked a lot already about your success and how now you've got all these stores and you've got an online business and you've got all these fantastic things. But I guess I want to learn more along the way. What are maybe some of the more bigger mistakes somewhat that were made that have now taught you a lesson that moving forward?
You know, Ali, I'm consistently failing, probably not on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis.
Okay.
You know, because there's a lot of risks that we take as a business, right? And the way that the numbers fall out is the higher risk you are, the higher your risk appetite is, the more failures you are going to have to endure. I think that, you know, a big problem that we have, even particularly in Australia, and I kind of see I spend a lot of time in the US and a lot of time abroad. And one of the unique things about Australia is the negative colored glasses upon which we perceive failure in this country. Being that if you fail at something, it's inherently bad, right? Which is just not correct. It's just completely false. Failure should always be looked at something positive because of the lessons that you learn from it. You don't learn anything from succeeding apart from what success tastes like, right? The true lessons that you learn always come from failure. And if you're not prepared to go through failure, the fact of the matter is you're not going to be learning the lessons you need to learn to ultimately achieve success, whatever that success may look like. So from my perspective, I mean, I literally could list failures off you, far many failures than successes.
Like, I guess what's maybe a big lesson you've learned from one of the big ones then? Something that's really happened maybe in the last 12, 18 months, maybe. Because I know, for example, you opened up the WA store. So I guess from my standpoint, it's really interesting for me from a business standpoint as to why you made the decision to shut that down. Because we were going to ask about, you know, keeping online versus in-store and the success and growth there. So, what is your decision process about, I guess, why you'd open a store, why you'd keep a store open, and, why that culture is important with such a big online space? Yeah.
So I guess is the question more towards what lessons did we learn from the Perth store? Or is it more towards what are my thoughts on bricks and mortar retail versus online retail?
I would say probably both. Probably touching on that one and then expanding.
Okay, we can do both. Okay, we can do both.
Definitely more so the second one, but obviously touching on first.
Sure. So, I mean, if we look at the bricks and mortar retail store network that we run in total, so, you know, obviously the Perth store was one that we opened and we closed when the lease finished, the first term of the lease finished. In South Australia, we've moved a bunch of stores around as well. So we've, you know, opened them in certain locations, close them down, open new locations, close them down, open new locations, so on and so forth. A lot of, if you look at that whole retail, bricks and mortar retail network that we've been running since, as I mentioned, the first store in 2013, so 5 years experience now, there's been so many failures, which are in turn lessons that I just would not have, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying that the fact that we perceive failure as bad is just inherently wrong. The amount of failures that we've had with retail stores over the 5 years, if you go back to 2013, I could not even foresee the lessons that I couldn't even think that I would learn the lessons that I've learned through the failures that we've had with retail stores over the 5 year period. It just it was not perceivable to me.
Yeah.
But from a retail store perspective, just listing some of them off. So, you know, some of the failures that I view as lessons. The first one is, okay, the location of retail stores in terms of the convenience to the customer is hugely important, right? In the supplement industry in particular, we tend to have this view that we are really one of the truly destination type purchases, right? People are going to go out of their way to go to a supplement store because it's what we call a quote unquote destination type purchase, where there is definitely some merit to that. But the fact of the matter is, when people are shopping bricks and mortar, they want the location to be convenient. They want to be able to get a park easily. They want to not just go somewhere to buy one particular thing. They want to go and do their grocery shopping and pick up a present for the birthday they've got this weekend and grab something that they've been needing to grab, and also grab their supplements at that point in time. So that's a lesson that, the theory was we are destination purchase, so we can put stores wherever the fuck we want and people will go out of their way to go and shop there, just isn't true. And we've learned that because we've done 15 different retail stores now, and some, most of them have worked, some of them haven't, and that's been a big downfall for the ones that haven't.
Yeah.
Another big lesson that we've learned is the local community and your penetration into the local community based on the proximity of a retail store plays a massive part in the success of that retail store. Once again, it goes against the theory of, if you've heard about us online, we don't need to do any local network marketing. You'll find us, right? But it's just not true. The fact of the matter is, if you take a 5-kilometer radius of a retail store, sure, you've got great online presence and great social media presence, so on and so forth. But the numbers are 98 to 99% of the people in that 5-kilometer radius have never heard of your business before. So you need to spend a lot of time investing in that local community to get that brand awareness out. Once again, a lesson that we've learned due to failures that I would not have even conceived as being a possible lesson to learn going back 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many of them. Like I could talk the whole podcast.
That's kind of what I wanted to more focus on, was the lessons out of them than the failures, so to speak. Because like you said, they're not. And just getting people to understand that when you started this business, like you said, 2005, and even the retail stores 5 years ago, you would do things 10 times differently to what you would have done, today. So it's that you still don't regret that, because obviously you wouldn't be where you are now. But at the same time, just getting people to focus on, not seeing it as a failure. So what would be your piece of advice on someone if they do have a big failure in their life and they feel like they don't know what to do now? How do you kind of pick yourself up from that and move forward? What's your game plan?
So one of the little sayings that I like to recite, I guess kind of an affirmation, for lack of a better term, is I tell myself that only good things happen to me, right? So even things that are perceived by the general population as inherently bad, like failing in a business or, whatever it may be, I'm going to perceive that as something good, right? Because only good things happen to me. So what good can I find in that particular failure, for, whatever you want to call it? What good is going to come out of it? What lessons can I learn from that? And then how can I apply them to the next venture that I'm going to go and pursue? So I think the mindset of the person experiencing the failure has a lot to do with how quickly they can rebound from it. I've seen in business many times people that have failed at a particular business venture and just beaten themselves up over it. How did I make that? That was such a stupid decision. How could I have done that? Or I didn't get support from the customers I thought I was going to get. The market fucked me, or all these negative thought processes, this negative mindset. It just doesn't achieve anything, right? So if you can set your mindset to only good things happen to me, okay, so what good has come out of this? If only good things happen to you, what are they? What do they look like? What have I learned from this business venture? How can I go and apply it to the next one? And I just think that mindset is a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the old fixed first growth mindset. If you're stuck fixed, then you're not going to be able to move forward. If everything is an ability to grow, then off you go. It's all positive focus. And also I like what you said about, almost that blame on others. I think taking accountability is a huge part of growth. So within your business, is that something that you like to focus on, really taking accountability? Even if one of your staff members screws up or something and does something wrong, do you then turn around and go, okay, well, maybe I didn't explain that to them properly, or maybe I didn't have a system in place? Have you learnt lessons from having employees as well?
100%. So one of the things that I'm really big on is extreme ownership. And I filter that through the business as well, right? So my position on that is I am ultimately accountable and responsible for everything that goes wrong in the business, right? So if I go so far as to say I've had staff members who have stolen from me before, right? Like literally stolen cash out of the till, you know, and like we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars over a period of time, and I'll take the rap for that, right? That's my fault. Well, why is it your fault? Well, because you didn't have the reporting procedures in place, right? You should have been able to pick that up the first day it happened. How did you let that shit go on for 12 months and not see it happening, right? So that's my starting point, is I'm ultimately responsible for everything that goes wrong in the business. And then I filter that down, right? So the way the hierarchy of the business works, so then my general manager is ultimately responsible for everything that goes wrong in the business. And then my retail store manager is ultimately responsible for everything that goes wrong with the retail stores. My media manager is ultimately responsible for every mistake that his team makes. So you start from the top and you filter that down. And what you end up getting is that you eliminate people's ability to handball and blame others, right? So there's a saying where, you know, if you point the finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? It doesn't achieve anything. You are the one that is ultimately responsible for all of your, everything that goes bad, all of your failures, all of your lessons. It all falls back on you. And if you start from that position of extreme ownership, I think that's the best position to start to learn from things that don't go the way you want them to go.
100%. And I love that focus. So like even just going through, you know, we've been talking for 30 minutes and you brought up 3 amazing topics or tips for people listening. Number 1, do more things that push you towards happiness. 2, you can't fail if you got that growth mindset, or you only see positives from a situation. And number 3, what you're saying just then, extreme ownership. You know, we say that there are 3 big things that you live by. Is there any other key ones in there that you think about in terms of affirmations on the daily?
Yeah, absolutely. So another one that I have is things don't happen to me, they happen for me, which I guess kind of plays on only good things happen to me. It's very similar, but it sets you in a mindset of being active, not reactive, right? So if you're the person where this happened, whether it's good or bad, right? It doesn't have to be bad. It can be good or bad. This happened to me, that happened to me, this happened to me. You're reactive to your environment. You're reactive to things that are happening around you. Whereas if you're of the mindset, this happened for me, that happened for me, this happened for me, your mindset is that you are in control of your environment, right? So all of these things are happening, but they're actually happening for you, not to you. So that's a big one that I think about quite frequently, and just kind of sets me in that active, not reactive mindset. I have so many, Ali. it really depends. Sorry?
They're huge ones for business owners and just general people that are going to succeed. I wouldn't even just say business owners, but if you want to succeed, number 1, you got to be happy. Number 2, you got to take accountability. You know, it's all of those things. And I guess, you know, we could sit here and talk about the business numbers and then how many retail stores and this and that, but the real nitty gritty of why we wanted to get you on here is because we want people listening to understand that it all comes back to mindset, that you don't get to where you are without the right mindset. And, you know, if you're someone that's just expecting things to happen without actually being genuinely every day waking up and wanting to achieve and wanting to be positive and wanting to grow and wanting to evolve, then it's not going to happen. Whether that be a bodybuilding show, whether that be a business, and I think that, you know, for me personally, I definitely find that athletic, similar to you, athletic background, was a sprinter, got injuries, that's why I started lifting. Like your story just resonated with me. But, you know, how did that kind of carry over? Do you feel like the body, it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg, but the bodybuilding or the business, you know, you started with bodybuilding and then went to the business. And then when did you transition then, I guess, back into bodybuilding? Did you take a break for a while? What's kind of been your background and journey with that side of things?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that that parallel, because there are a lot of parallels between, you know, the particular sport of bodybuilding and business. You know, probably one of the biggest ones is the patience aspect. It's funny you bring this up, Ali, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I actually started typing a post for Instagram about it today. But I find it really interesting that, so in bodybuilding and in health and fitness in general, right, it's pretty well accepted that if you want to build a good physique, firstly, you have to formulate a plan, right? Then you have to invest the time in figuring out, what exercises do I need to do to add shoulders and chest and glutes and, so on and so forth. So actually educate yourself on what you're trying to do with your body. Then it's pretty well accepted that you actually have to do the work, right? You can't think about doing squats or think about doing bench press or think about doing bicep curls. You actually have to do it.
Some people think you can, but
then it's pretty well accepted that the more pain that you're willing to endure, the better results are going to be, right? If you're going to chase those last few reps past failure versus someone who's not, you're going to, get better results. If you're willing to go through that pain barrier and go through more failure, you're going to build more muscle and you're going to get more results. Then it's pretty well accepted that you have to be consistent. And then it's pretty well accepted that you have to do it for a long period of time, right? We kind of get that in health and fitness and definitely in the competitive side of bodybuilding. In business, that complete thought process just falls down. For some reason, I think that people think that if they want to get into business, firstly, they don't have to do the research. They don't have to invest the time. Then they don't have to go through the pain of failure and, they can just kind of go on cruise control. Then they don't have to be consistent. Then they don't have to be patient. And everybody wants to build $1 million business in 6 months from scratch. Yeah. And I just find it incredible, the parallels between the two, but then the breakdown in actual practice between the two. It's incredible because the two are so, in terms of practice, the two are so perfectly aligned. If you can take what you know about bodybuilding and apply it to business, guaranteed success in business. Like literally over the medium to long term, guaranteed success.
Yeah.
The problem is most people don't do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's interesting because even with the clients that I coach, the ones that are the most successful on a competitive stage or in a fat loss phase or whatever it may be, are the ones that have the tough jobs, that are higher up in their field, that are still striving for business things. They're probably even busier than some of my other clients who maybe are not so business oriented because they again have that mindset there where they know that in order to achieve a result, you need to put effort in.
Just got to do it.
And that there's no special sauce, it's effort. And you can't outwork effort with any other bullshit. So I think that it's really important that, you've got that mindset around the two, and that I think it goes the other way around as well. I think a lot of people with competing in particular think that they can just snap their fingers and it's going to happen without kind of going, well, if I apply the same principles to how I attack my work or my relationship or whatever it may be that you're successful in, it's almost like find the things you're good at and then apply that to all aspects rather than just one and wait for the others. So awesome. I really, really like that. So my big question to you, I'm going to ask a couple more business ones and then I'm going to let Shawnee take over and do also the lifting ones. But okay, so in terms of your time, Mr. Mencel, I know you're a busy man. So how the heck do you fit everything in and spread your time so that you get your lifting in, you spend time with friends and family, you do all those things? Do you feel like, and brutally honest here, has there been areas over the last 10, 15 years, because you would have had to sacrifice maybe going out on weekends with your mates and getting drunk when you were 19 because you were competing. So, what things do you feel like over the years have maybe had to take a back seat? What things have had to come forward to get to where you are?
So I guess the first part of the question, how do I kind of fit everything in? The truth is I don't. The truth is, as I mentioned to you guys at the start of the podcast, I always put more on my plate than I know I can fit. And the one superpower I'd love to have is not having to sleep or being able to add more hours in the day. So the truth is I don't fit everything in. The way that I then go about figuring out what I do fit in is prioritization. So, I'll have a massive list of things that I want to do, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, bigger picture, however you want to kind of construct it. And then I'll start chipping away at things based on priority. So, what's important to me? Is it important that I get my workout in every day? Yeah, it is. So that's going to go to the top of my priority list. Is it important that I get 12 hours of business work done every day, or, you know, whatever that number is? Yeah, it is. So that's going to go to the top of my priority list. Is it important that I get to spend time with my better half every day, or, you know, a certain number of hours per week or whatever it is? Yes, it is. So that's going to go to the top of my priority list. So, you know, it's more when you look at time management, I think that prioritization is a big part of it. And I think that, you know, a lot of people, firstly, a lot of people don't prioritize, and this is kind of being active and reactive, right? So they kind of become very reactive and just let the environment take them, and don't really give a lot of thought to prioritization and what is important to them. So they end up doing a lot of shit that's not really important to them, that chews up a whole bunch of their time. And then they get to the end of each and every day and they go, oh shit, I didn't get to the gym today. Fuck, I probably should have, or I didn't get as much work as I needed to get done today, or whatever it is, because there's just no thought given to prioritization. Then I think the second part of that is just being efficient with your time. And I think one way of kind of looking at this is something else I've been giving a lot of thought to in terms of balance as well, is whatever you're doing at a particular point in time is giving your attention 100% to that task. I think a lot of people kind of lose a lot of efficiency with their time when they start trying to multitask things. You know, so when you're at work and you're doing a particular task, do that particular task. Don't, you know, be looking at bloody Instagram DMs and Facebook messages at the same time and being interrupted every 2 minutes by something popping up on your computer screen or whatever it may be. When you're with your better half, be with your better half. Don't, you know, spend the time that you guys are spending together, once again, scrolling through Instagram DMs or looking at Snapchat or whatever it is that you do. When you're at the gym, go to the gym and do your workout. Don't, you know, burn 5 minutes in between working sets, once again, playing on social media or whatever it is you're doing. So I think that from a time efficiency perspective, going all in on what you're doing at a particular point in time is just a really kind of good hack to increase the amount of efficiency you're milking out of every minute of every day.
100%. So pretty much just be present in whatever you're doing and be present in that one thing so that you can be efficient.
I think presence. Yeah, 100%. I think presence and just giving your attention to what you're doing, you know, is a good way to make sure that you're getting it done to the best of your ability in the shortest period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because people are always like, I haven't got enough time in the day. And it's like, well, how much time did you spend if you use your screen time on Instagram a day when you don't even realize when you're meant to be communicating with someone or doing whatever? I'm the same. When I work and I do my client check-ins, I'm doing my check-ins and my phone's off or down or away, notifications off, airplane mode, you know, all those things so that you can be in the moment. And even the same in our relationship, like, you know, phones are down, you don't talk to your partner whilst doing this, you know, like you talk to them and communicate. So I love
I've got this little saying, Ali, that the guys hate it around here, but because I get it quite a lot, you know, like, why wasn't this deliverable done? Or why didn't you guys get this video up? Or where's this article I asked for? And the common response I get back quite often is, oh, I didn't have time, or I ran out of time, or I don't have time. And so my response is, I don't want to hear that. If you think about saying that, say this instead: it wasn't a priority.
Yeah,
absolutely. It wasn't important to me. So, you know, hey, employee number 3, how come you didn't get me that written article that you were supposed to deliver to me yesterday at 5 p.m.? Oh, I didn't have time. No. It wasn't important to me. Oh, really? It wasn't? Okay, all right. Well, do you actually still want to have a job here, or do you want to go do something else? It just completely changes. It removes the excuse, because it's a bullshit excuse, right? I didn't have time. Everyone has the same 24. How you spend that 24 and how efficiently you spend that 24 is completely up to you. So don't say I don't have time. Say it wasn't important to me. It's not a priority to me. And that's going to allow you to then immediately reflect on how you did spend your time and therefore what was important to you.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
so
I think the shock of saying that out loud.
No, it is. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's a kick up the arse.
Yeah, and it's again, it comes back to self-accountability and you know, taking that. So I guess in terms of touching on that, when you say, you know, there's all these people out there who've all got the same 24 hours, I find that really interesting as well. Because then because I look to other people who I know have got, 50 companies, or they've got their finger in all these pies, and that motivates me to get more shit done in my 24 hours. So who are your kind of mentors, either business-wise or people you look to, read books, those sort of things?
Yeah. So, I mean, one person that I kind of look to, I've never met him before, but I will at some point, is Dwayne Johnson, is The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, the amount of stuff that he is able, the amount of because a lot of people know The Rock is just an actor, right? But he has his finger in so many different business ventures. He runs a production company. He works as an actor himself. He's got so many things happening. And, the amount of things that he gets done in 24 hours is incredible.
And he's got a family and kids and all those things.
Yeah, there's so many different things. I got a lot of business people that I look to as well, in and outside of the fitness space. But generally, the people who I kind of look up to, because it allows me to get a bit of perspective whenever I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, are people who have more on their plate than I do. And so my thought process is, well, shit, if they can do it, if they figured out, one of my favorite podcasters at the moment is a gentleman known, his name's Ed Milet. I don't know if you
just started listening to him.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I've listened to Ed for ages, and Ed's got I think I was saying in a podcast the other day, he's got 14 different companies.
Crazy. Yeah.
So I'm just like, and he's got a family, and he does the podcast and this and that.
Tony Robbins,
And he's jacked.
Yeah. And I'm like, look, if they figured out how to do it, I may not have the answers. I probably haven't I know I haven't had the experience to figure out how to do it. But if they figured it out, what am I complaining about? I can figure out my situation right now.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Yeah, it's the exact same. Look to people who are achieving and, how are they either maybe potentially doing something different to what you're doing and you can learn from them, or how do I just get inspired or motivated by them when I'm feeling that moment of maybe a little overwhelmed, maybe a little stress creeping in, but it's productive. So, get back on track. So I guess my last businessy question would be, what is the most fulfilling thing about what you do? Why do you do it?
The most fulfilling thing about what I do is seeing people literally improve their life through health and fitness. Not just their bodies, which obviously we have a big impact on people losing weight, people putting on weight, people reversing diseases like diabetes or heart disease or whatever it is, but literally improving their life and the effect that the physical transformation has on their confidence, their mindset, how they're able to apply that to all other areas of their life. I'm so fortunate, literally every single day I'll have between 5 and 10 DMs in my personal Instagram account. And that's not the Massive Joe's one, it's just my personal one, of people saying thank you and telling me a story of their transformation and the impact that it's had on them, the people around them, their life, their confidence, their outlook, so on and so forth. So for me, that's the most fulfilling, is being able to have that positive impact on people's lives, and using health and fitness as I guess the catalyst to be able to do that.
Awesome. Any other things that you get from it? What about personally, in terms of do you feel fulfillment in seeing a store open, or a personal achievement that's because obviously that's achievement for them, it's still personal for you, but something more just for you, that you go home and you're like, fuck yeah, I did that today,
Look, I think probably on a micro level, I get that every single day, because one of the things that I do as part of my my morning routine. So I've got a task list that I do every morning. One of them is gratitude journaling. One of them is perspective journaling, affirmation, so on and so forth. And so one of the things I do every morning is I think about something that I achieved the day before, and I think about something that I'm going to achieve that day of that morning. And those things for me, the fact that I'm able to do that very easily every morning, it's usually, 5 or 10 things that I achieved the day before, being able to, literally achieve. And they're not always big things. Some of them might be, we launched a new pair of TMJ apparel shorts yesterday, or we got a new video up on the YouTube channel that's going to reach 5,000 people or whatever it may be. They're not always big things, but just that satisfaction of going, you know what, we did that. And that was us, and we did that, and that's a tick in that box. So I think that you know is fulfilling every day. But definitely on a macro level, what I mentioned about, you know, the fact that I know that all of these little things that we're doing are having the big impact of improving people's lives. I think for me, you know, there's not a lot of professions that you can say that.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, looking at the professions that I had to choose from, if I went down the engineering perspective, especially in oil and gas, no way I could say that. If I went down the the legal perspective, and what I majored in was corporate law, once again, it's a destructive profession. You know, you're not improving people's lives. You're making people's lives more difficult by the nature of the profession. So, you know, I'm very grateful for that. And I think from a macro perspective, from a higher level perspective, that is what kind of fulfills me on that level.
Awesome. And I loved hearing that you say you make that time every day for your journaling and your gratitude meditation, because the big bullshit that I hear from my clients on the regular when I ask them to do those things is I don't have time. And I'm like, how do you not have time to do 5 minutes? Again, if you're listening, my clients, it's not a priority, okay? Because again, it all comes back to that. So what are some of the things? So do you do a similar reflection in the evening, or you just have your morning routine, or do you also have a nighttime routine, AM, PM routine?
Not a nighttime routine. No, it's a morning thing that I do. Usually at nighttime, I'm busy doing something.
Yeah.
And you know, by the time I go to bed, I'm that exhausted that I'm just out like a light. I do try to read before I go to bed, but I don't have a routine like I do in the morning. In the mornings, I know the first thing I do when I get up is I think about something I'm grateful for, and I write it down, or I take a note in my phone. The next thing I do is I think about an affirmation of that particular day. The next thing I do is I think about something that gives me perspective. So some sort of perspective journaling. If I'm feeling good about something or bad about something, I'll think about something that puts that in perspective for me. Then I'll do what did I achieve yesterday? What things did I achieve yesterday? What am I going to achieve today? Then I meditate every morning as well. Sometimes I have more time to do it than others, but I make sure I meditate for at least 5 minutes every morning. That's a big part of my morning routine. And then I get on with my day.
Awesome. And how long do you think that whole thing roughly takes you? Or say on a day that you're really rushed and you've only got a couple of minutes to meditate.
Yeah. So on a day that I'm really rushed, so my meditation will come down to pretty much 5 minutes. I'll do like the bare minimum, just at least get myself in that meditative state, which tends to take about 5 minutes. Really 10 minutes.
Listen to that, clients, 10 minutes, 10 minutes out of your day. Okay? Yeah, to set your
it doesn't take long, right? You think about something that you're grateful for. That takes what, like 5 seconds? You know? Probably the one that sometimes takes a little bit longer is the perspective, because sometimes it's difficult to think about something that puts you in perspective. But tops, you're talking like a minute, even if you have to dig quite deep for it. So it's not a lot of time.
No, exactly. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes easier as well to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess, well, our next question, we had a few listener questions. One of them was, can you get me a job? He lives in Perth, so you can fly to SA, James.
Daily commute.
So James, if you want to fly over, we'll let Joe know. Now, we had a question from some of our people on Instagram and stuff. Wanted to ask about ambassadors and sponsors. Basically, the question was, you know, does it matter how big your social media is? Was pretty much their direct question.
Sure. Yeah. So social media So social media is one piece of an overall digital footprint. So one of the things that we look at, and we've done a lot of different ambassador programs and athlete programs in the past. So we've had a lot of experience and made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of lessons. But your social media following is one part of your digital footprint. So when you're thinking about, you know, I'd like to become an athlete or an ambassador, and I'd like to approach this company, there's a few things that you need to consider as an athlete. The first and most important one is, do your values align with the values of the company? That's the first one, right? Is this a company that I vibe with? Is this a company that's going to vibe with me? Do we align? Because if you don't align, the whole thing is not going to work, right? It's going to come across as faked and not natural, and it's forced, and you know, you're going to lose respect from the people who you have influence over. The business is going to get nothing out of the relationship. It's going to be a disaster. So that's the first thing you need to look up. The second thing you need to look at is, what does my network look like, and what level of influence do I have over that network? Because you've got to understand that any company is going to look at it as an ambassador or as an athlete, as a marketing tool, effectively, or an advertising tool. So then return on investment becomes particularly important. So whatever a company is going to invest in an athlete or an ambassador, what return are they going to get from that athlete or an ambassador? And pretty much the only thing of value that an athlete or an ambassador has to give to a company is their network and the influence they have over that network. The bigger your network and the greater your influence, the more valuable you are to a company. So you can ask for more from that company because they're going to get better return on their investment.
Yeah.
So social media plays into that 100%. But I can tell you some of the best, we don't call them ambassadors, but some of the best affiliates that we have don't even have a social media following.
Yeah.
But their local interpersonal network is so big and their influence runs so deep that they make incredible affiliates, and they don't even have social media. Or they've got it, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, so it might be someone like a local PT who has a thriving business and they send 50 clients in a month, you know?
Yeah.
That is going to bring in more people than somebody who posts booty shots and has 1 million followers, but most of their followers are in America and not even in Australia. So
100%, 100%. And we've got the experience to back that up.
Yeah.
I mean, we've worked with people like that, and it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't
Sure, their network may be huge, but their influence over that network is non-existent.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an organic audience, or an audience that's in a position where they trust and are ready to invest.
Correct.
It's an audience that they like to visually look at them, they look pretty, but it's not like they trust them from an educational or informative standpoint, which is very different. So that's the last, actually I've got one more businessy one, but when it comes to your customers and your lead generation and actually growing in terms of people coming through the door at Massive Joe's or online, where do you invest your most, I guess, time and money in terms of those areas? And I'm sure that's changed over the years. So yeah, at the moment, like, is it more sort of Facebook marketing or just you and social media? Is it athletes? What are your kind of main areas at the moment that you focus on?
So there's a couple of things I can delve into here that I think will add a fair bit of value to those listening and whoever asked the question as well. I think the first thing, that by far the most money that we spend from a marketing perspective on growing the business is actually on customer retention. So we're not so concerned about getting new people through the door. We're concerned about people who come through the door coming back. So if you look at, our loyalty program is probably the biggest piece of that. The amount of money that our loyalty program costs the business is easily into 7 figures. So we're spending millions a year just on the loyalty program. And that doesn't target customer acquisition at all. That's 100% customer retention. If you've never shopped with Massive Joe's, you don't even know about the loyalty program. So that's a customer retention perspective. So by far the biggest chunk of our marketing spend is customer retention, is getting people coming back. And the justification for that is, there's this old saying in business where it costs 10 times as much to get a new customer as it does to retain a current customer, which I have seen, maybe not 10 to 1, but it definitely costs a lot more to get a new one than it does to retain an old one. And I've seen that play out over my almost 15 years in business, time and time again. So I know 100%, with 100% conviction, that if I'm spending as much money as I can on customer retention, that's going to get me the best return on investment from a marketing perspective.
It's the same in personal training as well.
Of course. Personal training, gyms, this industry is rife for that playing out. Yeah.
You've got this boiling hot lead who knows about you, who trusts you, who has already worked with you potentially before or bought a product, versus someone that has no idea who you are. Like, you're going to have to hustle to get this person in the door, whereas you're just going to have to nurture this person and keep giving value, and they're going to stick around. So also, is there any other areas, I guess, what would be your next one maybe other than that? Is it sort of events?
Yeah, so then I guess going into the customer acquisition perspective, so actually getting new people to the business that haven't heard of the business before. So this really, the way you need to look at this is, you need to look at, firstly, defining your target market, right? Figuring out who your target market are. So for us, it's anyone interested in health and fitness, pretty much. Maybe they've got a certain amount of gym experience, because usually people will go to a gym before they start taking supplements. It doesn't work the other way around. But generally speaking, it's people in the health and fitness space. So you define the target market, and then you figure out where your target market is paying attention, right? So where is their attention? Okay, people who are interested in health and fitness, a lot of their time is, well, not a lot of it, but a bunch of their time spent in the gym. So their attention is in the gym. What are they doing on the gym? Well, in between sets, they're fucking around on social media, right? So we know that they're spending a lot of time, particularly in health and fitness. The biggest social media platform by far is Instagram. Probably behind Instagram is Facebook, and probably right next to Facebook is Snapchat. And then below Snapchat is probably YouTube. So there's a big social media piece where our target market is spending attention. Where else do our target market spend attention? Well, we know if we're going to a health and fitness expo that has a big following, like, for example, the Arnold Sports Festival Australia, that they're spending a lot of attention in a very short period of time at that particular expo. So you can do this and you can repeat it and figure out where your target market's spending attention. The next piece is you need to figure out, how much is it going to cost me to get in front of them and disrupt that attention? So if we use those two examples, how much is it going to cost me to run an ad on Instagram? How much is it going to cost me to run an ad on Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube? What does that look like? How much is it going to cost me to exhibit at the Arnold Sports Festival? So you play that piece out. Then you're going to have a bunch of different scenarios. You're going to have attention, the price, and you pick the best ones. You pick the ones that are going to get you best return on investment. So to give some real practical advice, for us right now, the two best places that we can spend marketing dollars from a customer acquisition perspective is Instagram story ads and the Arnold Sports Festival Australia.
Awesome. So I'm guessing that you guys are going there in 2019 then?
Oh yeah, of course. It's our 5th year as gold sponsor this year.
Yeah, awesome. Because I know you and Tony are pretty tight, which is kind of what Sean's going to roll into. So I'll let you take over with, I guess, some more of the promoter IFBB side of things now.
I think when you say, going back to your wanted superpower of more hours in the day, you've then added on being a promoter on top of that. So what was the thought process in adding that on top of it?
So I guess the thought process with that was it kind of born out of frustration, right? Being a competitor myself, I'd always leave amateur bodybuilding shows with a real sour taste in my mouth. It didn't really matter what federation it was. There was always something that I'd walk away and I'm like, man, like, I just paid all this money, I invested all this time, and the federation really didn't give a fuck. Even when, like, to be completely transparent with you, and I can kind of say this now, but even when I won my pro card, I was like, I just won my pro card. I should have been, and I was over the moon. But at the same time, I still had this sour taste in my mouth. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is that how that actually played out right there? So when what happened with the IFBB Amateur League and the NPC/IFBB Pro League, the split kind of happened, and there was an opportunity for us to take over the IFBB Pro League from Tony from an Australian perspective, and then filtering down to all the different states. And my opportunity with Massive Joe's was to take over South Australia. It was just an opportunity that I really couldn't pass up, out of frustration from a competitor perspective, because I just hadn't seen anybody do it right. And I think with, really not that much extra effort, we can do something really cool here. And we don't have to do something exceptional. We just have to not make the stupid fucking mistakes that the past promoters have made.
I think it's laziness. I think they got a bit
and ego. I think ego was a big part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, the opportunity came up. Tony asked me if I was interested. I said, mate, 100% I'm in. And then we just kind of figured it out from there.
Awesome. Did you, because you didn't run it last year, did you, the SA? This would be your first
we did our very first show in October last year. So we did the South Australian State Championships October last year. And now we're doing the South Australian Arnold Qualifier on March 9. And then we'll do the end of the year. So we'll have two shows a year, a season A and a season B year. The season A will be the Arnold Qualifier. The season B will be the qualifier for nationals. And that's how it's going to play out.
Perfect. And for anyone that's, I guess, interested in doing your show in SA, they don't have to be from SA, do they, for the one?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not at all. No, you can compete, and this goes for all of the state shows. You can compete in any state show that you want. It doesn't have to be in your state of residency. You know, we've even got some athletes that are looking at doing all of them. So like going state to state.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So
and like a lot of our audience is from WA, obviously. So like, guys, to get to Adelaide, it's like $150 on an aeroplane. Like, you know, go over and do that show, because our WA show is super early. It's on the 16th of Feb. So if you want to get another one, you know, you're not ready to compete for the Perth show, go to Adelaide and then go on to Arnold's. You know, it's a week between.
It's we're on March 9, which is the Saturday before, and then the Arnold Sports Festival starts the next Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending.
4 weeks between the WA show and the Arnold.
Yeah.
So how do you? So now you're a promoter.
Yeah.
How does that align with your own personal physique and pro card goals?
To be honest, there really isn't a lot of alignment, because what I'm doing from a promoting perspective is with the amateur side of the IFBB Pro League. Yeah. And then what I do from a competitor perspective is with the professional side of the IFBB Pro League.
Yeah.
So at the moment, especially in Australia, there's not much overlap. I mean, I'm a Men's Physique Pro. We don't even have a Men's Physique Pro show in Australia.
No, not yet, Tony said. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. So there's not a lot of overlap, apart from the fact that, you know, effectively it's the same federation. It's just the amateur division of the overall professional federation.
Yeah.
So what's next for you yourself as a competitor, not a promoter?
Yeah. So my next show at the moment, I'm looking at doing the San Jose Pro, which is in California, the last weekend in June. And then the next weekend going to Chicago and doing the Chicago Pro. And then the next weekend going to Vancouver and doing the Vancouver Pro.
That's a big
and just seeing how I do there. It's like I said, you know, it's kind of tricky as an Australian Men's Physique Pro, because we don't have an Australian pro show. So you need to effectively, you know, I mean, there's a few shows in Asia and Europe, but you really need to go to the US. And you guys would know how far away it is and how long it takes to get there. So, you know, if you're going to invest the time to go over there, you really need to find a group of shows that are kind of very close and just do them back to back to back, just to get your return on investment, you know, in your prep and the time it takes to get over there. So,
and even just getting your name out there in the pro league, because it's very different from going to an amateur well known in Australia to going to the US. You know, like I was telling to Shana Baker about this, and she said the same. You know, when she did, I think it was 4 or 5 shows back to back, and she said, I just want to get my name out there and get my feet wet, and then I'll go back to the drawing board and give it a year and then kind of come back. So so your plan now, like, is your end goal to get to that Olympia stage? What is your goal as a Men's Physique Pro?
My end goal is to win the Olympia.
There we go.
That's the ultimate goal. So, you know, the steps to do it is you know, to qualify. There is a qualification process now. You can't
just points now.
Put me on stage. So there's a point qualification process, and you know, that's the first step. And then the next step is to do well at the Olympia to the point where you automatically qualify. So you only have to focus on that show every year. And then the next step is to win the damn thing.
Yeah. And I guess with the new point system, that makes it even harder for Aussies, because it means you've got to do more shows to build up more points, rather than before, if you won a show, you were an automatic invite, I believe, for first place, and I think sometimes second.
That's right. So the only way to automatically qualify for at least the Men's Physique Olympia, and I think most divisions are now the same, is to firstly finish top 5 at Olympia the year before, that you get automatic qualification, or to win the Arnold USA. And that's it. If you don't do that, you have to do at least 2 shows to accumulate enough points to get an Olympia qualification. So, it's tricky, but, you know, the harder the challenge, the greater the triumph, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you feel from winning your pro card to stepping on stage again? What do you feel you've improved upon personally in your physique? What was your weakness?
So going from Men's Physique Amateur to Men's Physique Pro, and definitely the top level of Men's Physique Pro, there is a definite difference in size, in muscle mass, especially for me. I'm 6'2". and a lot of the top men's, there are some top men's physique guys that are over 6 foot, but a lot of them are under 6 foot. So, to give some numbers, when I won my pro card as an amateur, I was on stage at 95 kilos. My pro, if kind of everything goes to plan and the numbers fall where I think they'll fall, my pro debut, I'll be over 100 kilos on stage. So, at least a 5 kilo muscle difference. So that's a big thing. And then the second thing is, as all aesthetic-based athletes, we always have stronger muscle groups and weaker muscle groups. For me in particular, probably my two biggest weaknesses coming up as an amateur were my upper chest and the thickness through the middle of my back. And I've been working really hard on that over the last 18 months to kind of bring those up into proportion with the rest of my stronger muscle groups. So hopefully I've made some good headwind there, but I won't know until the body fat comes off and I can see what's underneath.
The big question we had is, do you have a coach who oversees your prep? Is it you? Have you got someone who's in your corner?
Yeah, so I tend to do most of my own preps myself. But I'm fortunate to have a lot of people that I consult with, coming into preps and helping me out with this and that and whatever. So one of the guys that I've been working a lot with over almost the last 12 months has been Nathan Williamson. He's down in Melbourne. He's an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. He's been helping me out with a bunch of different biomechanics to target different parts of my upper chest and my back that I wasn't able to target before. So he's really good with movement patterns and stuff like that. So he's been a big help. Yeah, very much so.
Awesome. And in terms of like your training split and structure and everything like that right now and then leading into the prep, how far out, I guess, are you planning on starting your deficit or dieting phase from what are we now? So we're about 6 months out, a bit less?
Yeah, pretty much. So I'll start probably, a slight caloric deficit about 16 weeks out, which for me is going to put me somewhere in the middle of March. If the 16 weeks I'm measuring from the San Jose Pro, which would be the first show, depends which show I kind of pick, but it's going to put me somewhere in the middle of March. So
that's get back to Arnold's and into it.
That's it. Straight into it. So,
exactly.
Yeah. But I tend to, the way that I go about contest prep is I like to start quite early, especially for a men's physique. Starting 16 weeks out is a long period of time, but I like to do things very slowly. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, so that I'm not so far in caloric deficit that I'm chewing up a lot of muscle mass. And secondly, it's just better for overall health, to not have to lose 10 kilos in 6 weeks. To lose 10 kilos in 16 weeks is just much easier on your body in terms of, stress and
I think we've all learned that now. There's still people that come to you at 6 weeks out as a coach and say, put me on stage when they're 20% body.
And you're like, let's wait for season. Yeah, exactly. So I guess we got any other training questions for Joe on that side of things?
I have a big one, and that is flexible dieting or bro? Meal plans or flexible dieting? What's your methodology?
Is this? Are you asking me what I do, or are you asking for
what do you do? I mean, there's no wrong, there's no right.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a bro dieter. I kind of always have been, and I think that's because when I got into bodybuilding and competitive bodybuilding in the early 2000s, flexible dieting didn't exist, right? All of these diet techniques that we have now didn't exist. It was like real bro dieting. It's like, if you want to step on that stage, you better be willing to eat fucking chicken, rice, and broccoli 7 meals a day for 20 weeks. And that's the way it's going to happen. And we didn't have any, it wasn't even up for discussion. Like, that's what you did. And that's what I did.
There was no science.
No.
There was nothing.
Super small niche.
Yeah, and it was like, you need to cut your calories, cut a meal of carbs out, simple,
Exactly. Have a few less grains of rice.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess in terms of that though, I'm sure you're not that bro anymore in terms of like fish and a rice cake, but like what do you do now in terms of your preparation? Will you write yourself sort of a meal plan for the week, assess your progress weekly, and then kind of map out a plan and follow that for a week and then check in? How frequently are you touching base in terms of photos, things like that, to track your progress?
Yeah. So what I do when I start a contest prep is I'll have a plan for the whole prep. So if I say I'm going to start 16 weeks out, I'll know what my caloric intake is at the start of the prep. I'll know how much cardio I'm doing, when I'm doing the cardio, what my macro split is, and I will plan that out for every week for the 16 weeks. So if I'm dropping calories one week, I won't also increase cardio. If I increase cardio one week, I also won't drop calories. It's kind of one variable changes week by week.
Yeah.
So I have a plan.
Yeah.
That kind of, at least allows me to know what the prep's going to look like. The plan never goes to plan,
Yeah.
but I still do it because it gives me a bit of a blueprint.
The structure.
Then it gives me the structure. Yeah, 100%. And then I work reactively week by week. So every single week, first thing in the morning, Monday morning, I'll weigh myself, I'll take my measurements, I'll take my skin folds, I'll see how I progress over that 7-day period. And then I'll make appropriate changes to either my diet or my cardio or my macronutrient split or whatever it needs to be to make sure that I'm on track and losing body fat at the rate that I need to lose it.
Awesome.
One other question, one last one, is when you did IFBB, you were a bodybuilder, yeah?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
How did you find the transition going from a bodybuilder up to and over to physique?
Yeah. So when I first started, physique didn't exist. So that's why I did bodybuilding, and I did bodybuilding from 2004. I did my first physique show in 2013. So, I had a good 10 years, almost 10 years of bodybuilding before men's physique even was a thing, at least in Australia before it was a thing. I guess the transition to men's physique for me is the category just suits my physique better than bodybuilding because I am taller. I do have, quite a big structure. So there's a lot of space for me to fill out with muscle, and I just can't compete with guys who are a foot shorter than me because, you have
to be 135 kilos to
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that I guess was the reason for the transition. The transition was really easy, to be honest, because when you come from bodybuilding posing to men's physique posing, it's like there's not even posing, right? You just you got to tweak a few things and figure out exactly how to be symmetrical with one hand on your hip instead of two. But having that bodybuilding foundation and that bodybuilding base really made the transition to men's physique really quite easy.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably a tip to anyone listening because there was another question, how do you know, which federation do? And we've covered this a lot actually in one of our podcasts before, just specifically on comp. But like Joe said, he realized he didn't suit bodybuilding, even though he did pretty well at it. But to go to that next level, it probably wasn't suited for the genetic base. So I think that, like you said, do you feel like genetics do play a big part of it in terms of maybe the federation or division that you're going to select? Or do you feel like people should just do the one that they're passionate about because their idol does it and they love that? Which do you feel is more important?
Look, it depends what you're looking to get out of the sport, really. If you want to be one of the top athletes in the world in your particular sport, then you're going to have to be self-aware and you're going to have to consider your genetic limitations.
Yeah.
If you're a female and you don't have the ability to hold a lot of muscle mass, you're not going to be competitive as a figure athlete. It's just genetically, it's just not going to happen. But you might be a top bikini athlete.
Yeah.
From a guy's perspective, if you're like me and you're tall and you've got very long muscle bellies and a big structure, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a competitive top bodybuilder. You're going to put your body under a lot of stress and you still may never get there. Whereas the men's physique category may be perfect for you. So, if that's your goal, then you have to be self-aware and you need to consider your genetic limitations. If you're just trying to do, mimic your idol, do it.
Yeah.
Do your thing. Do what makes you happy.
The last question is, do you still train legs? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I often, usually 2 days after every leg workout when I'm hobbling around the office and every time I sit down and stand up, my ass is on fire. I question why I still train legs.
You're like, just do calves. Yeah.
It's just like, why? But no, but I still do.
Awesome.
I guess I'm a bit of a creature of habit.
Yeah, and grow the biggest muscle group in your body, and everything else grows. So
but the funny thing is as well is I see, I joke about it, but I see, some of the top men's physique guys that have small legs, and they just look strange. Like they don't fill out the bullshit. Yeah, they don't fill them out. They got no carbs at the bottom. It's kind of like what's holding up that massive upper body?
You need a booty to fill out those shorts, and no girl wants to look at a guy with a flat ass. So
that's right.
You need that booty. So it's important. So I guess the last things to finish up on, because we know you're a busy man and we've already held up an hour and a half of your time. But big question is, where do you kind of see yourself? I guess in 5 to 10 years, do you have a bit of a plan in terms of both the business, also somewhat personal goals? Where do you see, Joe? Let's start with 5 years time. So you'll be, how old will you be then? I didn't even ask your age. Is that rude?
So I'm 33 at the moment. So I'd be 38 in 5 years time.
Shawnee?
Yeah. Look, I guess from a business perspective, one of the biggest goals for us at the moment is really to build out our retail store network. We've done a really good job of building a really cool network here in South Australia. We've got 9 retail stores here in SA, and we've done it very well with where we've put them and the networks that we've created and the community that we've created. So in 5 years, I'd like to have at least replicated that in Melbourne. I kind of think of that as a 3 to 5 year goal, and then probably started on the next major city, which could be Sydney, could be Brisbane, could be Perth. I'm not 100% sure where we go, but at the moment it's kind of all systems are go. So I guess that's from a bricks and mortar retail perspective. From an online perspective, our content just keeps getting better and better every year. So I'd like in 5 years for us to unquestionably be the #1 resource for health and fitness, at least supplement, but generally speaking, health and fitness content in Australia at least, and one of the top players worldwide. That's a big goal of ours. We run an apparel line as well. So we do we do a lot of business in apparel actually, but I'd really like to grow that to an international apparel brand. That being said, we send a bunch of stuff internationally already, but an established international apparel brand, next to the biggest brands like Gymshark and those health and fitness brands would is definitely a 5 year goal for us as well. What else have I got? I've got the distribution side of the business, but that's probably not really relevant to the listeners, but we do have goals there as well. So I guess from a business perspective, that's kind of some things that we'd like to tick off for sure.
Yeah, awesome. And then in terms of your goals personally,
Olympia.
Besides Olympia.
Yeah, look, I'm a big goal setter, Ali. I'm sure you would already be aware, but I'm a big goal setter. So I do actually set both 5 year goals and then 1 year goals for all different parts of my business. And it's funny, we're doing this at the start of January, because one thing that I'm very particular about is I always spend January every year, like the full month of January, setting my yearly goals and drilling them down to a point where, I'll start with my big 5 year goals for different parts of my life, figure out what that looks like on a year by year basis. And then, okay, so 2019, I know what that looks like, and let me drill them down so I know exactly what I need to accomplish every single month in every different part of my life to make sure that I'm on track to achieving the 5 year goals. Yeah. So I have a lot in different parts of my life, but, we've spoken about business and we've spoken about competing. So, we'll keep it to that.
Exactly.
So from a competing perspective, definitely be placing top 5 at the Olympia in 5 years time for sure.
Yeah, awesome. So is your goal, I guess it's setting it out. And do you actually go, well, I'm going to be on the actual Olympia stage by this year to achieve that? This place, you don't structure it. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I know if the 5 year, and this is literally the type of methodology that I'll use. So in 5 years, I want to be placing top 5 men's physique Olympia. So if that's the 5 year goal, the 4-year goal probably needs to be the same because I want to be in the top 5 mix. So the 3-year goal needs to be, okay, I'm going to place top 10 at the Olympia. The 2-year goal needs to be, I need to make it to the Olympia stage. The 1-year goal, which is now 2019, well, I need to get a bunch of pro shows done in the US.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I take the medium-term goal and break it down so I know exactly what I need to accomplish this year.
Yeah, and I like that working back from such bigger goals, because a lot of people reflect on 1 year and work back from there instead of like 5 or 10. And then a lot of the times is where people end themselves in like a bad place financially or physically, because they're only planning for that 1 year rather than going, okay, well, I want to retire when I'm whatever, 50. So financially, I need to step back the next 30 years. So I think that it's really cool that you said that. We actually, our first podcast of the year was on goal setting and reflection. So perfect timing that this episode comes out after that. So we just dropped that one today. So this will be going live same time next week. So I think that's really the main stuff that we wanted to cover. I guess my last thing is just to ask you if you've got any final words for people that are more so wanting to be an entrepreneur, thinking about starting a business, thinking about going all in on something they're passionate about. What is your one last final piece of advice for them?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give to anybody that is looking to start their own business or start their own enterprise or get into their own business is, firstly, understand that patience is a big part of it. Patience and consistency. So if you want to be successful in business, and I draw the analogy to health and fitness once again, if you want to be successful in business, you need to invest a lot of time in exactly the skills that you're going to need to be successful. You need to invest a lot of time in practicing those skills. So not actually thinking about doing them, but actually doing them. Just like, you can't think about doing squats. You need to actually do the squats. You're going to have to be consistent. So you're going to have to put in a lot of work over a significant period of time. And you're going to have to be patient. Don't expect that you're going to go from 0 to $1 million in the first year or the first 2 years or the first 5 years. It may take you 10 years, but that's where the consistency and the patience piece comes in more than anything. So you just have to be willing to do the work, and you need to be willing to do it for a long period of time, which is why it's super, super important that you have no doubt in your mind, you have no question in your mind that whatever enterprise you want to pursue, it's something that you are truly passionate about. Because if you're not, it's just not going to work. You're going to come up against obstacles and they're going to be insurmountable, and you're not going to be able to get through them because you don't have the passion there to drive you. I've come many, many times up against challenges and adversity that I honestly, looking back on certain things, I don't even know how I got through it. And the only thing I can put it down to is I'm just like that passionate about what I do that it didn't fucking matter what it was. I was going to figure out how to get through it. But most people, and to be honest, most people logically would have gone, nah, this is shit. Why are you doing this? Like, this just makes objectively, logically, this makes no sense, but the passion pushes you through it. So if you're looking at getting into business, if you're looking to start your own business, make sure there's not a shadow of a doubt that it's something you're passionate about. Invest the time in the skill set. Make sure you're putting the skill set to practice. Do it consistently over a long period of time and be patient.
Love it.
Awesome.
Perfect ending to that. So that just wrapped it up. So Joe, I just thank you so much for spending this hour and a half with us. It's been super
guys. Thank you for having me. It's been a pretty cool chat.
It's probably cool for you to, get to do this stuff, because a lot of the time we know what it's like when we're on our own podcast. It's not really about you and your story. You're talking about the subs or this or that. Yeah. So I think it's great that people hear more about that. And I guess lastly, give us a plug. If people don't already follow you, where's the best places to get in touch, follow, plug the company, plug yourself?
Plug the show.
Absolutely. The easiest place, from a company perspective, Massive Joes, search any social media for Massive Joes, you'll find us there. From my personal perspective, Joseph Mencel, my first and last name. Once again, type it into Instagram, type it into YouTube, type it into Google, your favorite search engine, whatever, I will pop up. You won't be able to miss me.
Awesome. And if you're in the SA area, head down to the SA IFBB show on March 9th.
March 9, Brighton Performing
I'm
Arts
going to
Centre.
be there. I'm flying over. I've got a client, so I'll be popping down. And then we'll probably see you at Arnold. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope you guys listening have got some awesome business, personal mindset advice from this episode. So thank you, Joe.
Legend.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.